Hello and welcome back to today's choice events. Welcome back because we have the first choice event now after the summer break. So I hope you all started very well rested and energized back to work. And yeah, I'm in Berlin here, so it's rainy, it feels like autumn, and yeah, it feels like the perfect time to start with you today into the new season. The second half of the year, so to say, in the business world, but then, yeah, into a lot of insights around climate transformation as well. And yeah, first of all, my name is Lara Obst. I'm one of the co-founders from the Climate Choice. And for everyone who hasn't been here yet, I quickly introduce you into the setup of the webinar. And then we will start with our topic today, how to address Scope 3 complexity in the fast-moving consumer good industry. So first of all, as you notice, we have the Zoom webinar function here. So you see me, but unfortunately, I don't see you. And that doesn't stop you from being a very active and necessary part of that webinar. So you can always contribute by putting your questions in the Q&A. And to get you right away started, we will test it right now. So you can share in the comments. You maybe find it on the bottom or on top. It says Q&A or Fragen and Antworten if you have a German setup. You can share your name and from where you are joining in today. So for me, it would be Lara from Berlin. Very happy to meet you. And I'm going to see who dares to answer first and shares with the others who they are and from where they are joining. So first one was Maria. Welcome. Very great to see you. Best of greetings to Amsterdam. Then we have David from Palm Beach, Florida. Sorry, that was a misassumption. Isabel from Hamburg. Georg from Forum Altbach. That should be the right one. Matt from Zurich. And Felicitas from Salzburg. So yeah, great to have you. And yeah, amazing. You have shown everyone where to find the chat. And yeah, please connect, please share your own thoughts and comments and specifically your questions for later. We will collect them and in the end answer everything. For sure, if there's a short question in between, we can help you with, we also directly address it. And yeah, the second way how to connect is our Slack. So you have gotten in the email an invitation to join our Team Climate Slack community. So if you like, you can join afterwards and then you get always informed about what's going on in our climate community. You get best practices, events, and you can share for sure all your experiences as well. And that's about the webinars. Now I would like to introduce you to the Climate Choice. So why are we running these webinars, even though we are a software company? So our mission is it really to help every company to become a climate champion. And the vision behind it is to make them take every buying decision as a climate decision. As we all know, most emissions are locked in the supply chain, and we need a lot of smart data to make the right decisions and help us all work together and decrease emissions. So you find that all on our website to get more information. And you also find in our resources the latest published climate book from us. It just came out during the summer, and it has all the insights about decarbonization of Scope 3, about engaging suppliers, your setups, how to collect data, best practices from our community that we have collected during our climate summit. And yeah, you can just get it for free, download it, and then you get a lot of insights. And with that, I assume I have given you already a lot of context for today's webinar. And I would quickly first ask you a few questions and so to say get you on stage before I get our expert of today. So you can be active again by answering our quick question for you. So first one would be to get to know how you're coming to that webinar. What's your topic right now? It's about your climate maturity. So if you had to rate the climate maturity of your company, what would you say? Where would you stand? Sure, it's anonymous, so just share. Would you say I'm a beginner, whatever that means? I'm a learner, I'm right now in the process somewhere, or my company is a leader because we are already far ahead, or I don't know, I'm joining in, I'm not so much in the sustainability strategy maybe involved. So I see there are some answers already, some are maybe that would be the option, I don't know, waiting a little bit. And yeah, I think I can end it and share it. So I hope you should see it now. If not, I'm just reading it out. So most of you are learners with 57%, and then leaders even with 34%. And then just about 9% have said, yeah, my company is a beginner. So quite advanced, I would say. That means we very much invite you to share even more comments and thoughts in the chat. And then our first question would be, I think you might see it already. I'm not that sure. So my team maybe has to help me because it tells me it's already shared in a meeting. I have to go back. Let's see if I can still share it. Start. Great, now it works. So thanks a lot, probably Florian in the background for helping me. So yeah, what is the integration of climate into your core business? Yeah, what is the level of integration between the climate agenda and also your financial agenda? Because we all do see that there are differences often between our climate strategy and planning, and then maybe where we are making buying decision, investments decision, and so on. So first one would be, it's not yet integrated, or there's a low level of integration, medium level of integration, high level of integration, or I don't know. So again, you can choose from one of the answers. And I see not so much is moving anymore. Give you for you more seconds. And now I can share. So half of you have answered there's a low level of integration. So even most of you say the maturity is quite strong already. Yeah, the financial integration can be the next step to like really lead and have an yeah, business model impact, strategy impact. So I assume that gives us a very good setting to welcome Francois on stage, and he gonna share with us his experience. Hello, Francois. Can you hear me? Do you see me? How are you? Where are you today as well?
Hi, Lara. I can hear you and I can see you. Can you see me?
Perfect. That's always my first question to make that sure.
Very good. I'm calling you from a little town called Schaffhausen, which is about 45 minutes train from Zurich, Switzerland.
Great. So yeah, I assume you are these days traveling a lot to get everyone integrated in what you are doing. And yeah, I'm very eager to learn what you can share today about specifically the fast-moving consumer industry and how you're tackling Scope 3. So maybe I just see if you can share your slides, if you can start, and then I'm gonna listen with the audience. And as said, we're gonna collect the questions, and then in the end, I'm back for the Q&A.
All right. Well, thank you very much. If you can see my slides,
Yes,
I will start. So
we first of all have to bring them also in the presenting mode. So far, I see the whole. Perfect.
All right.
That's great.
So hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. So indeed, the last 2 days I've been spending here in Switzerland with the global climate team, and we're in the process of planning the next 3 years in the net zero agenda, and especially also planning for next year, resources and objectives and priorities and metrics. And so it's a timely conversation about Scope 3 complexity. As a matter of fact, the carbon footprint of Unilever is 95% Scope 3 and less than 5% Scope 1 and 2. So on our pathway to net zero, asking ourselves the question on how we can reduce the carbon emissions through the complexity of our value chain is, of course, a very important and strategic question. Now, just to give you some perspective on who we are as an organization. So you probably know our self from our brands. So we have about 400 brands in the world. We're a 60 billion euro turnover company, UK headquartered, but especially as we are such a diverse business, we have brands in the home care industry with cleaning products. We have brands in personal care such as Axe and Dove, which is for more the personal use. We have brands in the nutrition space such as Knorr. We have brands in the ice cream business group such as Magnum, for example, and we have brands in the beauty and well-being space such as Vaseline, for example, for the lips. So we span a very large number of categories, which means that we also span a very large number of value chains. And as you can see, our products are very much day-to-day products integrated in the households and in the lives of consumers. Our estimate is that roughly 3 billion people use our products every day. And as our purpose as an organization is to make sustainable living commonplace, we ask ourselves a lot of questions about how we reduce our carbon footprint, how we can transition 4 to 5 million hectares of our land footprint towards regeneration or restoration, how we secure the livelihoods and improve the livelihoods of 300 to 500,000 smallholder farmers, and how we generally integrate that into the commercial agenda so that sustainability and purpose becomes really embedded in what we do and how we operate. Now, in order to have a bit of a double click on our sustainability objectives, you can see here we are committed on nature, on deforestation-free supply chains. We have a commitment with our Climate and Nature Fund to help protect and regenerate 1.5 million hectares of land. And we have a commitment to have water stewardship programs in the 100 sites that we identified as water stressed. We also have commitments on the social agenda, with all suppliers paying living wage and living income to their suppliers, with 2 billion spent commitment in the diversity of suppliers, particularly smaller scale suppliers and women suppliers, and of course, respecting human rights. And then, as you can see, we also have commitments on waste, particularly virgin plastic reduction and moving to more recycled plastic, while collecting and processing more plastic than we sell. But my intention today is not to talk too much about the nature, social, and waste pillars. I really want to focus on climate. And so basically on climate, we have 3 targets. Our first target is to have 0 emissions by 2030 in our Scope 1 and 2. So our 250 factories would have 0 emissions by 2030. We are right now at minus 68%. We will probably land at minus 70% by end of this year. That's on a 2015 baseline. And that is aligned to science-based target, 1.5 degree pathway. We have a second target, which is halving the footprint of our products by 2030 against a 2010 baseline across all scopes. but this is relative target. So that's an intensity target per ton of product we sell. And then we have our net zero by 2039 target, which has not yet been validated by SBTi. And I will talk a little bit more about that, because that is ultimately now has been our major focus in the last year on defining the absolute reduction target by 2030 across all scopes, not an intensity target, but an absolute target, which is necessary to have your net zero target science-based validated. So I'm not going to go into that detail. This is just to show you that there's actually underneath these high-level targets, there's even more detailed targets about our wider influence on society, about governance, data, and disclosure. And we take our role as sustainability leaders and as advocates for transformation very seriously, in that sense that we are strong believers that as an organization of our scale, we actually have a responsibility to enable political conversations as well that are ambitious, and enable other stakeholders and other peers, and especially as well companies within our value chain, to be ambitious and dare to be ambitious, dare to set stretch targets and develop pathways that are difficult to reach, because we do have a role as influencers in that space and enablers. Now, if you look at our supply chain, as I said, more than 70% of our footprint comes from the ingredients and packaging that we sell. Our upstream scope is literally where the leadership in climate is necessary. And by that, I don't want to dismiss the efforts that are necessary in scope 1 and 2, because it is actually quite complex to get to zero emissions in 250 factories. But more and more, we consider the scope 1 and 2 as almost a hygiene factor. If you are a climate leader, I saw there are many climate leaders here around the table, tackling your own emissions, tackling your own operations comes with a very solid business case. In the last decade, us working on this agenda, we saved more than 1 billion euro in terms of energy efficiency and energy costs. And right now, with very fast evolving technologies in terms of solar, for example, or renewable electricity, PPAs, or even heat decarbonization, heat pumps, and other technologies, many of them have today a robust business case. Of course, it's not as easy as I articulated. There are many different conditions that need to be met in order for that business case to work. But there's enough information and knowledge out there to know how to do it and demonstrate how it can be done in a smart way. However, scope 3 is a very different beast, because that is beyond our operational boundaries, and therefore we can influence, we can enable, we can engage, we can build capacity, we can incentivize, there's many different strategies and tactics to make things move and transition supply chains. But the reality is that we need others to elevate their ambition at the same level as our ambition. And a very important first step to get there is to bring a lens of materiality into the conversation. So because we have globally about 56,000 suppliers, and so the first step we did was really look at what are the top 300 suppliers that matter most in this big 56,000 suppliers network. And the top 300 suppliers represent 60% of our footprint. And we could become very focused on very specific portfolios. As you can see, palm and LAS, LAB, which are ingredients to chemical ingredients to our cleaning products, are very big ticket items that drive our carbon footprint. Dairy, plastic, petrochemicals, tropical oils. It starts to become a much more manageable conversation once you get the view on materiality. Now, a couple of key challenges that I want to highlight when it comes to scope 3 is very much linked with data. And one of that is the complexity of shifting baselines and reporting. So in many cases, there is volatility that is to be expected in carbon data that is quite high, to be honest, and that is driven by different factors. When you move from global average carbon conversion factors for some of the ingredients and materials that you buy towards supplier-specific carbon conversion factors for specific ingredients and materials you buy from specific suppliers in specific location, the volatility in terms of that data can be quite dramatic. It can go, 40% up or 40% down. Same is the changes in carbon accounting methodologies. When we move from the AR4 to AR6, for example, which are again carbon conversion factors that are being updated by the IPCC and the science every year. As there is more knowledge and science that is becoming online when it comes to these ingredients, the conversion factors are evolving, and then again, that brings volatility in the system. But also the protocols and standards are evolving. The greenhouse gas protocol and the SBTi standards on net zero have recently been published and are still in some cases in the makings when it comes to land use change, for example. And as these protocols and standards change and as the boundaries expand, again, that has an impact on your carbon footprint. So there's a level of sophistication that is to be anticipated in the carbon management space that is very important to understand, and also very critical to educate the organization in that space, because over time you cannot expect the same level of accuracy and in carbon data, especially in your scope 3, than you would have in financial data, for example. And so that needs to be well understood. Another very important consideration is that we need to collect data from suppliers at very different climate maturities. If we look at the top 600, the top 300 suppliers that I mentioned, about 20% of them are climate leaders. Climate leaders being companies that are already SBTi validated or have a target that is SBTi aligned, and that have elevated the climate agenda as a strategic business imperative, and that have also the right investments and governance in place to drive that. 40% of them are climate learners in our space, which means that there is already some understanding around the climate agenda, particularly in own operations, but very limited understanding of scope 3 and no science-based target in place. And then climate beginners are another 40% of these top 300. And in that case are very, very early stage, not even knowing what their carbon footprint is, or even in some cases, not really understanding what a carbon is. So that is something that is still very important to keep in mind as you engage the scope 3. And then I'll speak about that a little bit more in the next slides. But in our case, we have very limited direct procurement with suppliers. So and by that I mean agricultural and raw material ingredient suppliers. We typically go through middlemen. So we have multiple tiers before getting at the level of the field, where ultimately the raw material and ingredients are grown. And so we need to reflect on how we can engage our tier 1 in a way that they then also align to our climate ambitions and align and enable their engagement of their tier 2, and then go up until the field and drive change at the field level. And we are engaging at these 2 levels, at the field level with specific programs and investments at the field level, and then through a supplier climate program where we engage our tier 1. So there's a whole new operating system in a way that needs to be established, and not only a conversation on reporting. Now, many of you, as I saw, are already leaders, so I'm not going to spend too much time here, but ultimately this is becoming, the science-based target is becoming, from our perspective, a credibility factor for climate leaders. Climate leadership needs to be aligned with science, needs to be aligned with ideally a 1.5 degree pathway, and possibly a 2 degree pathway. But there's an explosion of commitments out there, especially in the net zero space. But what we need to see is moving from commitment to action and planning, because there is a concern that more and more there might be a say-do gap in society, where more and more organizations and institutions are making bold commitments and saying things, but between saying and doing, there's actually quite a gap in many ways. So we need to orient the conversation towards delivery, and orient the conversation towards performance tracking and implementation and execution and skills, and in operational integration into key functions such as procurement and finance, and really start having the more operational conversations around sustainability, rather than the broad conceptual commitments and strategic intentions. And so why I put this slide is that I do want to emphasize that when you align your strategies and your operational executional reality with new standards and science and evolving protocols, that means that, again, your data boundaries and scope also broadens. And so as we've been aligning our greenhouse gas measurement to the 13 categories of scope 3, and integrating a lot of new categories into our measurement, including indirect procurement and upstream and collaborative manufacturing and others. That means that there is increasing amount of carbon footprint that also comes from changing methodologies. And so when you see in the market some organizations that are increasing their carbon footprint, that is often also driven by a more robust data and a more accurate measurement system. And so we need to start understanding the difference between methodology changes and changes that are driven by real program and real impact. So a little bit more on the top 300. As I said, we clustered the top 300 per maturity level, and the way we engage with them is along 3 tiers. So for the beginner suppliers, let's say, we developed a partnership with a company called M2030, and M2030 is a company that is providing educational resources and interactive learning seminars, and really engaging the beginner suppliers on that journey of, what does it mean to measure your carbon footprint? How do you set your target? How do you develop a roadmap? How do you identify your hotspots? And really establishing the basis. Then we have the category 2 suppliers that we engaged with another external partner called EcoChain. And EcoChain is helping the learner suppliers to basically calculate their product carbon footprint. And because product carbon footprint is a very different skill set than corporate carbon footprint. It's an expert capability, and that requires investments like life cycle assessment to really measure the carbon footprint of the products that they sell to Unilever across 9 different stages of the life cycle of that product. And it can be a daunting exercise. And so EcoChain is helping these learner suppliers to develop that capability in a way that as they then measure their product carbon footprint, they can provide the product carbon footprint to Unilever, and we can then in our carbon data management system replace over time, as we get access to supplier specific product carbon footprint data, replace these from the global average and regional data sets. And then for the leader suppliers, there's a partnership that we're very much involved in, which is from WBCSD, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, which is called PACT. And PACT is, the aim is that we need to standardize a data exchange mechanism for these product carbon footprint across suppliers that are basically supplying products to different buyers, so that builds mutual trust and confidence, and also, of course, drives efficiency in the system, rather than have, one supplier needing to calculate product carbon footprint with slightly different methodologies for 10 different customers. The aim of this approach is to have one consistent, aligned, standardized methodology, so that the suppliers don't have to do double work and create confusion. And then just another example of the complexity of the data and transition dynamic in a multi-tier supply chain is palm, because we use a lot of palm oil derivative ingredients, particularly in our personal care and beauty and well-being products, such as the soap bars of Dove, for example. Now, between the palm kernel oil derivatives ingredients that are being used in our soap bar and the palm oil plantations, there is a couple of tiers, right? Because the palm oil fruit is being grown at a land level that then goes to palm oil mills that will go into refineries or kernel crushing plants, and then go to derivative processing plants before going to Unilever. And as I suppose many of you are aware, the practices on the field, if you take at the product carbon footprint of a Dove soap bar, for example, the vast majority of the carbon footprint comes from the field, and particularly the sourcing location, whether the palm fruit was derived or harvested from a plantation that is deforestation free, or whether that plantation was in the past established in a location where there has been deforestation. So the deforestation free palm oil supply chain is, and being able to guarantee the provenance of the palm from a deforestation free location is literally the biggest driver for carbon footprint reduction in a Dove soap bar, for example. And of course, there's a whole bunch of other issues to be monitored and managed and verified at the palm oil plantation level, which are around human rights issues, and some of the social conditions there. But so what we've taken as an approach is really to go at the field level in terms of guaranteeing the traceability of the origin of our palm oil derivatives, and really looking at establishing partnerships, particularly with looking at geospatial data and satellite imagery via Google partnership, and going really at the level of the palm mills rather than staying at the level of the refineries or the palm oil traders. We decided we had to go up to the field level and really secure the traceability of the no deforestation palm. And so that leads to also a very close understanding of the reality on the field. And then again, it leads to a much broader conversation around industry standardization, because as you know, the palm oil industry is very, very big. And it's not because we found a way to trace the origin of the palm up to the plantation and the mill that the whole industry would go into that direction. So there's a broader engagement piece about, again, standardization of data, and how do we elevate the conversation in a way that we enable and influence also a broader conversation about securing operational models or enabling models for deforestation-free supply chains, and ultimately it's about risk management tools and risk mitigation tools to guarantee the proper origin of our raw materials. So the Forest Data Partnership with WRI and NASA has that ambition as well, to really structure together with some palm oil traders as well, and governments and NGOs and civic society stakeholders, enable a broader conversation about industry transition. And then the intention is that the palm oil case would then also serve as an example to then expand the scope of this approach to other ingredients such as cocoa, coconut, and paper, and others. So obviously these are important investments that require dedicated resources, human resources, and financial resources. But we do believe that industry collaboration and partnership is fundamental in this Scope 3 transition conversation. So as I mentioned, standardization requires collaboration. It's inevitable if we want to go fast into scaling up these types of Scope 3 decarbonization programs. We need to have, over time, standardized methodologies, data collection templates, similar types of systems, similar type of audit protocols, and a coherent view on uncertainty, because otherwise it's very complex. And we need to accept the fact that there will be a level of uncertainty and there will be a level of volatility for some time, and also then manage that in the narrative. Industry collaboration is not an easy game. We see that as well in agriculture, because we have a lot of commitments on regenerative agriculture and transitioning hundreds of thousands of hectares of land to regenerative agriculture. We are very involved in industry-wide collaborative platforms such as SAI or OP2B, but as many of you might know, that is dynamic that takes time. There are concerns around competitiveness, there are concerns around antitrust, so we need to navigate this with ambition, but with care as well. And then finally, there's in the space of carbon, there's of course a very important reality also that nation states and governments are very engaged and involved as well in this space under the Paris Agreement and particularly Article 6. There are regulations that are being put in place in terms of how to regulate the carbon markets. And so when we as private institutions or organizations are doing investments, whether it's in reforestation or restoration or regeneration, we also need to understand how that plays out in relation to the nation states and the nation's objectives and the government's objectives in terms of carbon management, and particularly in countries like Indonesia, etc., where there's a lot of palm sourcing coming from. And similarly on the renewable energy certificates and power purchasing agreements, that's a space that is moving fast, and regulations are going fast in that direction. So it's an area we need to also monitor closely. And I'm almost finished, and because I want to make sure we have enough time for some exchange. But I think a credible conversation on carbon cannot be done without also tackling the governance topic. At Unilever, we have, one could say, 3 different types of sustainability teams. So we have first the global sustainability team reporting into our chief sustainability office, which is very much focused on external advocacy, policy development, strategic direction and target setting, and very much influencing as well the public debate around sustainability leadership and what that means. Then we have the business operations sustainability team, in which I'm part of the leadership team and heading the climate portfolio. And the business operations sustainability team is the team that has the task to really operationalize the sustainability targets in the end-to-end supply chain. So we are the ones that need to make the targets real and make it really happen. And then we have a sustainability finance team, which is a relatively new team, and that is really the custodian of our non-financial reporting, and particularly also looking at performance tracking, investments, and looking at integrating carbon and sustainability in a broader term as part of the decision-making processes at the strategic level and in the strategic planning processes, so that it really becomes embedded in the way we operate and also the way we are recognized. So all of the bonus eligible employees at Unilever have a portion of their bonus that is depending on sustainability performance indicator. And carbon, of course, is a key part of that. And then we have in the independent assurance of all of our carbon accounting and carbon reporting. And our Unilever board is also signatories of our climate transition action plan. We published our first climate transition action plan 3 years ago. That was signed by 99% of our shareholders as part of the General Assembly. And next year we will present again our second climate transition action plan to the General Assembly for approval of our net zero strategy and net zero target and plan. So final thoughts, for me, what keeps me awake at night is that there is an increasing expectation from the markets and investors, and also from our internal stakeholders, that carbon data should have the same accuracy as financial information. That is not possible when you talk about scope 3 for the moment. So it will take some time to reach a level of data accuracy and limited the volatility when it comes to scope 3 before we can reach, you know, a level of confidence, let's say, about the accuracy in comparison with financial information. But it's definitely something that we're striving towards. And then expecting that corporate cost, everything beyond the forecasting capacity, that speaks to the logic of financing the transition. And, you know, it's a very different conversation to talk about how much capex do you need to transition to zero emissions in your own factories versus how much capex or opex or investments do you need to transition, you know, your supply chain towards lower carbon. And so there again, the hardcore financial conversations needs to be grounded in the reality of the complexity. And that's it for me. I will stop now and pass it back to you, Lara, to see if there are any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for going into your whole strategy around climate and supplier engagement, and then specifically for scope 3, and really going down in different areas. I think I got like a million questions already in my head, but there are already some in the chat, and I would encourage everyone who is here to share their most pressing questions, so I have a chance to address them all. So now is the best time to add more in the chat. And maybe I would start just in the beginning. In the end, now you have given us with these 2 pitfalls, maybe a hint. But I would start with a big why, right? So when we talk about scope 3, you also mentioned the science-based targets as being like kind of the de facto standard for target setting, and therefore also involving scope 3. But I still have the feeling that this is a very strong argument maybe in the climate bubble and in our sustainability area. And as we are all part of the financial world, like, can you name like what is maybe the biggest drivers or also the arguments for sustainability managers or procurement managers who are leading that topic? Why is really now the time to tackle scope 3 and look into it, even though it's very complex and still messy?
Yes, I mean, as I showed in the beginning, making sustainable living commonplace is part of our purpose. So sustainability and a sustainable business, and making sure that our business is recognized as a leader in sustainability, is very much part of who we are as a company. So and also part of what our brands are looking to convey. So the first, and that was confirmed, that direction was confirmed by 99% of our investors, right, with the signature of our climate transition action plan. So first and foremost, it's because our purpose goes beyond being successful financially, and really looks at being stewards of our planet as well, and aligning to the Paris Agreement, which is our common faith, right? As humanity, that is something that we truly believe in. Secondly, I think there's a reality in procurement that as we have these very ambitious commitments of net zero by 2039, and soon a very ambitious commitment to reduce by 2030 by a significant absolute amount our carbon footprint, carbon will need to become fully embedded in the day-to-day decision-making of our procurement professionals, in the same way that quality has become embedded as a way of doing business, in the same way that cost and efficiency or safety is a way of doing business. Carbon specifically and sustainability more broadly will become part of the mainstream job description of a procurement professional. We're not there yet. It takes education. It takes a journey to upskill the professionals to get there. But I think the main enabler to that will be our capacity to translate our carbon footprint into a specific carbon number for each of the suppliers and each of the ingredients and materials we buy, that can then on a click of a button become visible in the dashboard of a procurement manager whenever he engages a conversation with this supplier. That's for me the key enabler. So it comes back to the data again.
Yeah, so there's a massive pressure point on the financial side if everyone is signing it, of your investors as well. And then there's a massive driver for accurate data and like really making smart decisions, specifically in procurement. What I hear out of it. And then the point that you lead already directly to, actually, I liked a lot in your presentation that climate was not just boiled down to this one CO2 number, but like rather you were using this climate maturity approach. I mean, we have seen the different segments of beginners, learners, the leaders. And yeah, can you maybe, I think you have shown it, but maybe in a few words, like why are you using this climate maturity approach rather than just this one CO2 number where we are like all, I think like it's a holy grail to have it, but why do you need these other data points around it to work with your suppliers?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that climate transition takes time. And we've been on this journey since close to a decade. You know, our baseline for scope 1 and 2 is 2015. And so we've gone through the journey, and we know that in the beginning, the key driver of starting that journey is especially in operations is cost savings. I mean, we've saved €1 billion in energy costs in the last decade by doing this decarbonization. So there's a real business case on the first step, which are the beginners. Once you get on the journey, and once you wrap your head around, you know, scope 1 and 2 and carbon management and skills, and you start realizing that this really is worth the investment, then you can go towards more complex conversations around, you know, product carbon footprint and science-based target and net zero ultimately. But it is a journey, and so we've done that segmentation approach based on these insights that, you know, you cannot engage a leader supplier that is already science-based target aligned and that is already, you know, some of our chemical suppliers, for example, the BASF and the Dows and the Solvay's of this world, they are already quite advanced on this journey. They have already significant investments in innovation towards, you know, lower carbon chemicals and biochemicals, etc. And so we're not gonna engage them in a strategic way around, you know, managing or measuring the product carbon footprint of your product you sell to us. We need to engage them on a different level around standardization, around strategic partnerships. And so it's unfortunately a time-consuming dynamic. It would be much easier to just click on a button and, you know, engage all of your suppliers in one narrative. The reality is that you need to invest for it, and you need to really tailor-made the conversation as relevant as possible.
Yeah, I really love that. Thanks for sharing that journey. I think that's what we see with our customers a lot as well. Like that it's probably everyone starts with, okay, I have my own targets. I see how it fits in my business strategy. Probably also seeing that it is a kind of survival question as well, if you're not planning to align with the Paris Agreement, and then going into first a calculation. And I think we have seen it in the last years that so many companies have announced they are climate neutral because they have offsetted scope 1 and 2. But then if you really go behind it and see, okay, what is in scope 3, it's a big portion of emissions. And if you drill down, then you have to work with your suppliers. And that's maybe a question that came up also here in the audience, which is probably a really good one. So can you say what is the biggest incentives for suppliers to be part of your journey and like to work together, maybe sharing information or being part of a learning journey? How do you reward them maybe? Are there incentives, investments even, or what is like planned along the way?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different angles to that answer. One clear feedback is that we receive is the knowledge sharing. Because we've been on that journey for so long, there's a lot of knowledge in our organization that when we share that with our suppliers, that's considered as a real value. That's one. Secondly, there's reality on the commercial side of the equation is that when we expand the nature of the conversation beyond the transactional conversation about price and quality and delivery into more strategic conversation around decarbonization pathways and strategic engagements, that then also gets into different conversation about the commercial relationship. So we would typically look for strategic partnerships with partners with whom we would have longer term partnerships. In some cases, shifting towards low carbon alternatives and low carbon ingredients or materials might come at a premium. So, for example, the NDP palm, the no deforestation palm, comes at a premium, has come at a premium for some time. And similar with other sustainably sourced commodities, they come at a premium. So there's a reality as well around investment that it's not necessarily an easy conversation, but if you take the bigger picture and you let's say you agree on a principle that some of the cost savings of decarbonizing scope 1 and 2 would be reinvested in innovation and premiums for low carbon materials and ingredients in your supplier base, then it becomes a full story rather than only looking at a silo and looking at the cost. So there's definitely a value equation that needs to be taken into account, and also we do have consistent feedback from the market about our brand reputation and our employer branding. We get access to the best talents in the world because many of the younger generation wants to work for corporates that are responsible and sustainable, and we get probably we have 1 million candidates per year that apply to work at Unilever, but we are a 150,000 employee company. So and the war for talent is real. So you can also put a value on that.
So you would say there's an incentive for the suppliers, like mainly having a consistent feedback loop, sharing knowledge, and like showing a path to like long-term business relationships. And on the other hand, there's also a strong incentive for your company itself, like to really be positioned in the market as a company that drives forward and takes the action behind their goals, so to say.
That's right.
Like these two incentives, I think that's often forgotten as well. Like it's your own company as well to deal with it. Great. There are many more questions in the Slack. I would invite you all to really join the Slack community, or here it's in the chat still. Put it in the Slack. We are happy also to forward it to Francois. Maybe, I don't know, what's the best way to reach out to you directly?
Well, you are my contact point.
Okay.
So if there are questions, I would say centralize them, and then we can, if you want, if that's helpful, we can build a short answers to this question, and then you can circulate that within your community.
Amazing. And then, I have a last question I always like to ask. So if someone was really busy now in their lunch break and listened in a little bit, but maybe also had lunch, and what would it be if most of the things are forgotten now or sound really complex and difficult to tackle? If you remember back 10 years ago, I think you started that journey, that's what you said. What would you say? What's the best way to really get into it and lose that fear around Scope 3?
I would say start by becoming very clear on which are the suppliers that are the most material to you. So make it manageable. Secondly, I would say, you know, talk with the suppliers so that you understand their needs. That can lead to, you know, some segmentation, and then start. You need to start somewhere. You know, we're now at the second scale-up phase of our supplier engagement program, but we started with 10, and then we expanded to 60, and then this year we expanded to 130, and the next year we expand to 300. So it takes time. I would say start small, but start. Even if you don't have all the answers, just start, and then the ball starts rolling.
That's also a really amazing tip, I would say. Like, really start with the ones where you can go maybe in a pilot and like really drive it forward and scale it from there. Well, thank you so much, Francois. It was really great to have you, that you invested your lunch break as well. And yeah, that you are right now planning the next steps around your climate strategy and suppliers. We are super excited to follow that path, and maybe see you back soon to challenge what the different lines show. Where the promises are and where we are all in latest a few years. I think the near term is always most important, right? And yeah, other than that, I would say everyone listening in 2 weeks, we have the next choice event. It will be about technical solutions around supplier engagement and data collection and management. So we can take the next step and get you started. Thank you so much, Francois.
Thank you, Lara. It was my pleasure to engage, and looking forward to continue the conversation.
Great. And yeah, wish you all a nice afternoon, a good week, and maybe soon a wonderful autumn. Let's hope for a nice time, I guess. See you all.